If I did something wrong, let me know. Mistakes.
I have yours, so you're good. I'll bring it all back. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Out of the way.
All right, good morning. And thank you for that. Good morning, and thank you for being here at Junior Achievement North. I'd also like to say Happy Black History Month. We have to acknowledge that because our history is everybody's history. All right, for those who aren't familiar with us at Junior Achievement North, Junior Achievement was established here in Minneapolis in 1949, and in September of 2021, we changed our name to Junior Achievement North to align with our vision. This name is more than a geographic footprint. It represents a compass point to guide our work. We're ready to move boldly forward with our innovative and accessible service model designed to impact students from kindergarten through high school. Junior Achievement North focuses on empowering students across our entire region and ensuring that opportunities are accessible as we work across Minnesota, North Dakota, and Western Wisconsin. To meet the needs of students, we will continue to offer in-person, hands-on experiences while also continuing our investment in virtual programming to expand accessibility. We are excited and honored to host the Black Entrepreneur Speaker Series and these panelists we have before us today. This is the third installment of our series. Our next one will be Monday, March 7th. Registration is open and will feature women entrepreneurs due to Women's Month. Please visit our website to learn more about registration and to learn more about our Black Entrepreneur Speaker Series. Finally, this series couldn't have been done without the generous support of our sponsors. Presenting sponsor, BevSource. Inspiring sponsors, Rise and Shine and Minneapolis Foundation. Empowering sponsor, PNC Bank. And our innovative sponsor, Highway Credit Union and CNA. Now, without further ado, I'll pass it on to our master of ceremony, Carl Benson.
I'm gonna try to attach this to myself and I'll be telling if it works. So I don't keep moving it, but we'll see. How did I sound? Great. Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you. Thank you all for being here today for this third installment of our Black Entrepreneur Speaker Series. My name is Carl Benson. Thank you for coming to this session on sports. Sports is clearly, for me, one of those areas that I truly love, and I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of be with these three gentlemen that you'll hear from today. Highly accomplished individuals with amazing backgrounds in sports. Feel free at any point, if you have a question, to raise your hand and sort of shout it out. You can certainly do that as well. I will have a general list of questions for them as well. As a reminder, this event is produced and inspired to enlighten, entertain, and inform not only young entrepreneurs, but folks looking to get into the business of sport. We want to offer our audiences, both in person and online, the opportunity to experience and learn from these remarkable Black entrepreneurs who are changing their industries in many ways. It's our hope that our organization and this collective of Black talent can work together moving forward in the future to continue an ongoing guidance and mentorship for Black kids in the Black entrepreneurial space. So we will start off with brief introductions of our panelists. Our first is right in front of me here, Quaye. Quaye is a native of Liberia, born 2 years prior to the dawn of the First Liberian Civil War, and his family narrowly escaped on the last flight leaving their war-torn country. He'll tell you more about that, but he is a hard-working, hard work, respect, and grit were qualities that Quaye's parents installed in him at an early age, and sports played a huge part in Quaye's adolescent development and kept him out of trouble as well. After a standout All-American football career at the University of South Dakota, Quaye entered the 2010 NFL Draft And throughout his career, Code played for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Buffalo Bills, and Cleveland Browns. In 2015, he retired from the sport and began a career as a business partner with his business partner, who owns and operates Line of Scrimmage LLC, a football skills training company here in the Twin Cities. Again, Quaye. Next, McDaniel Dell. McDaniel comes from a background in professional sports, college and professional sports sales industry with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Minnesota Lynx. During his time with the Timberwolves, level and drove over $240,000 in new ticket revenue in back-to-back seasons. In 2019-2020, McDaniel was recognized as the top 10 sales representative for the organization. Prior to his time there, McDaniel worked at Target as executive team leader at the store level. It is in that role that McDaniel established a taste for business and business leadership and company management. He is currently managing the business. McDaniel serves as the business development representative for Airborne Athletics. Airborne Athletics sells and manufactures the Dr. Dish basketball shooting training machine. McDaniel Dell. And last but not least, Tyrone Minor. Tyrone has spent a quarter century impacting the lives of thousands of individuals as a licensed educator, certified personal trainer, and fitness studio owner, and holds master's degrees in applied kinesiology and sports management. Tyrone was recently named one of the top 5 fitness influencers in the metropolitan area by the Twin Cities Collective, and his fitness studio, the Fit Lab, was named one of the top 5 fitness studios in the Twin Cities. Prior to beginning his professional career over 2 decades ago, Tyrone was a top 20 nationally ranked long and triple jumper, 3-time state champion, 10-time St. Paul City Conference champ, and in 2015 inducted into the St. Paul Central Hall of Fame. Tyrone Minor. I need Tyrone to work with my daughter, who's a triple jumper. So we'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that. Oh, I'm not supposed to do this. I didn't do any of that. So you want me to continue doing it? We good.
We got it.
So all good. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. At this particular moment, I want to give each panelist 3 to 5 minutes to sort of tell a little bit about their backstory, how they got here, what they're doing, and obviously, a little bit more about themselves personally. So we'll start with Co on the front here.
All right. Like Carl said, I'm Co. My name is Comignon Quaye. Co is short for Comignon. It's a lot easier to tell people Co when we have come in passing. But if we build a relationship like I'm doing with you guys today, I can tell you my real name and what it means. So my name is Comignon, and it means in the future. It's a Liberian name. It's my father's middle name. I was born in Liberia. Like Carl said, a couple years before the dawn of the Civil War. My family was able to escape the last KLM flight leaving the war-torn country. My mother and my brother moved to the States to kind of get life started, and me and my sister moved to Paris, France, where my dad worked in the Liberian embassy. When we moved to America, I instantly fell in love with sports because I also instantly realized that this was a different world for me. My skin color was the same as the kids in the inner city of North Minneapolis, but I still wasn't an African-American kid. And so as a young person, I was able to realize and kind of hone on certain skills that I didn't really understand I was honing in on. I lived probably 3 different lives as a young kid, being able to leave my home, living in one culture, living in one society, and then going out into the world and experiencing this world for the first time and my family's heritage through a different lens. And sports really took a grasp on me. I was different, and I knew that. The kids in my neighborhood knew that. And the only way I could really find a common ground was sports. And I really, me and my brothers really took in on that. Football was one of my passions. I remember playing football games in the neighborhood. When we moved from Liberia, we moved to the north side of Minneapolis in the Cecil Newman projects. And so you have a massive amount of apartment buildings, And so with those, in those apartment buildings had hundreds of families with tons of kids. So we always were outside playing football, playing basketball, doing backflips off of mattresses on the, just being outside, enjoying ourselves. So kind of like Fat Albert and Junkyard Gang, if you guys are familiar with the Bill Cosby show. But that's kind of where me and my siblings kind of strive playing sports, because that was our even ground. We weren't the African kids anymore. We were the best football players that were playing in the community, right? And so as I transitioned, we kind of grew up and we left Minneapolis and we moved out to the western suburbs, and I had the opportunity to play some big time football at a big time high school. I decided that football was something that I wanted to change my life and my family's life. And so when I was 16 years old, after my junior season, I told myself that I was going to do everything as much as I can to get myself there. Right? I was going to dedicate the time. I was going to sacrifice the nights going out with friends, doing certain things. I was going to hit the books as hard as possible and see what the outcomes would be. And that effort earned me a scholarship. That effort earned me a scholarship to the University of South Dakota, where I continue those same habits. And those same habits opened up doors for me to live out my dream playing in the National Football League. So throughout my career, I played in Cleveland, Jacksonville, and Buffalo. I retired from the game after a shoulder injury I had in Canada, but I kind of played a couple years after that, and I decided I wanted to hang them up and kind of transition into the next chapter of my life. At the time, the biggest piece for me was kind of separating myself from the game. For a long time in my life, I was a football player, and when my name was mentioned, when people knew of me, they knew of the game of football. And so I kind of wanted to separate myself and kind of revamp myself. And so I kind of stepped away from the game, and I started working with young people. So I worked with young people in numerous of settings: schools, detention centers, juvenile detention, jails. And so I created a passion for young people and influencing young people. And so I coached high school football a few years after, and I kind of connected back with sports. And I decided that I wanted to impact more than just kids in one community. I wanted to be able to impact kids from all over. And so me and a business partner of mine started Line of Scrimmage in 2017. And we've been able to connect with young people throughout just high school, but college, have guys in position to play professional football, youth throughout those clinics, and we do a lot of outreach in the community. So it's been a blessing to be able to put all those pieces and those passions in my life all together in something that I really enjoy doing. So that's me. Thank you.
McDaniel, you're up.
It's kind of tough to follow that up. I want to try and jump right in here. Very, very small world. So Quaye and I were speaking earlier, and I'm actually from Liberia as well. So you have two of the three panelists here from the same small country in West Africa. I think that's really cool. Testament to the resilience, of our people, and just being able to continue on and, be successful here in America. So very similar to Quaye, I moved to the United States when I was 3 years old in 1996 with my mother and father, escaping the same civil war in Liberia. Moved to Champlin. I moved to the East Coast. So I used to live in Maryland. Moved to Minnesota when I was about 8 years old, to Champlin, Minnesota, very, very close to Brooklyn Park. And a very similar story. I got involved in the game of basketball myself. For me, it was just, when you turn on the TV and you see, the people that look like you, a lot of the times they're in, sports roles, right? Whether it's Michael Jordan you're looking up to, or LeBron James, or, the guys that you see look like yourself, and you can see that, oh, maybe this is something that I can do. And that's really kind of what sparked my interest in the game of basketball in particular. I just thought it was so cool watching those guys, and I thought, hey man, these guys, it looks like they're they're doing magic tricks here. Like, it looks like it's supernatural what they're doing. So it just kind of really piqued my interest in sports. And as I got older, I realized I didn't have as many opportunities as maybe some of the folks around me. And I wasn't as good of a player. I certainly didn't have any college looks or anything like that after high school. But one thing that really clicked for me when I got to college was I met the basketball coach there, and he just, he gave me a shot. He said, hey, why don't you come in and try to walk onto the team, see if you can compete with these guys, see if you can play here. And when I got there, first couple nights were hard, obviously, but I was able to blend in with those guys, and it really showed me, like, if you continue to work hard, you not only can you play with these guys, but you can potentially even be better, right? You can get to a point where you're one of the best guys on the team. So after being a walk-on my freshman year, I stayed for 4 years, just chasing that challenge. Like, how good can I actually get? Maybe I won't be a starter, maybe I won't be the first guy off the bench, but I know for a fact that if I keep trying, I'm going to get minutes. I'm going to, put my name out there and just see where I can take this. It certainly wasn't my goal coming into college, but let's see how far I can take this. And, naturally through sports, you learn different qualities and different characteristics that you can take beyond sports. And that's really what happened to me. So I learned, fighting for something that you believe is yours. You learn about, sometimes you can put all your eggs into one basket, you can put all your effort into something, and, it just doesn't go your way. And sports teaches you that. It also teaches you how to react to that. And it also teaches you what you should do from there. Right. So I think that's something that I've learned from sports, and I still hold it today, and I'm still able to use that. And that's something that directly parallels into the field that I'm in now, which is sales. In sales, you could call 100 people a day and talk to 3 of them, right? And get 97 hangups or 97 voicemails. So it's about what are you doing to keep that consistency, keep that resiliency. And I just draw on a lot of my experiences from basketball, right? I tried to learn to play as hard as possible. I tried to run as hard as possible, but sometimes it just didn't go my way. It's the same thing in sales. So do you run away from that and do you say, well, maybe I'm just not good enough? Or do you take the other path and what can I do to get better? Right? What can I do to make sure that people talk to me on the phone? And what can I do to make sure that they're understanding my message? So those are the parallels that I draw between sports and the sales industry where I'm at currently. So after school, I started with Target, as Carl mentioned. So I was there for about a year as an executive team leader, basically a fancy word for assistant manager in the store. So they give you those titles and things in the job interviews, to try to smooth you over, and it worked for me. So they got me in there, and I was an assistant manager at Target for about a year. And then while I was with Target, I attended a networking event with the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. And that's how I kind of got my foot into both sales and the sports industry. So I was able to work for the Wolves for 4 years. I started as, an entry-level salesperson, had never made a cold call, had never, sold anything in my life. And then after 4 years, I ended up being in a business development role where, I reached out to company leaders and talked about how they could use Timberwolves tickets to, support their employee outings or support client relationships. So I think that progress was, just about being resilient and sticking with it. Shortly after the pandemic or during the pandemic, I had to take a different direction, obviously with live sports not being a thing. So I decided to get into the real estate industry and started a notary signing company. So what I do with my notary signing company is, let's say somebody needs to buy a new house or they need to refinance their house. What I'll do is I'll act as a third party that has no vested interest in the deal. It's just somebody that can come in, be completely unbiased. So tell them, hey, this is what you need to sign. This is what you're going to be paying. I'll print off the entire packet and bring it to their house type deal. So just providing that convenience for them from a notary standpoint. And then March of last year, decided to take on an additional role, more of the traditional 9-to-5 in a sense. So I worked with Airborne Athletics, which sells the Dr. Dish shooting machines. So I took that role because I thought it was a very easy parallel from selling Timberwolves tickets to selling, basketball shooting machines and still talking about the game, still being around the game. Obviously, you guys are all, from Minnesota, so you know how the Timberwolves have played over the last 5 to 7 years. Wasn't exactly the easiest thing in the world. Selling, tickets to a team that, had some work to do, but, those are all experiences and definitely led me to where I am today. So.
Let me start by saying good morning to everybody. And, good morning. And secondly, I'd like to acknowledge Carl and Junior Achievement for having us at this event. I appreciate that. So I'm actually a proud product of the Rondo community, right? So I grew up probably 2 miles from here. I graduated from St. Paul Central. I remember St. Paul before the crack epidemic, ravaged the community. So for me, sports was actually a way, it was basically a passport to a better life, literally and figuratively. So my journey took me from, Oxford, back then we called it Oxford Jimmy Lee Recreation Center, playing football and basketball. And then from there, went to St. Paul Central. I'm proud to say we were still are the last boys team track and field champion from a St. Paul City school. So I'm very proud of that. My journey took me to Drake University, where I got a full Division I athletic scholarship. Eventually I transferred back and graduated from the University of Minnesota. And, I competed nationally up until about the age of 33. So I competed actually against many Olympians that you might know of, famous NFL football players. I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but Cole, I'm not sure if you remember Rocket Ishmael.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I had his training card.
Oh, okay. Right. Now I'm sounding like I'm in the history books. Right. Yeah, I guess this is Black History Month. And basically for me, again, sports was a vehicle. I mean, it started out as a passion. I was competitive. I'm fortunate to have natural athletic gifts, but like these gentlemen up here, I believe that we're more than just our physical gifts. And that's one thing I want to make sure that I get across to, especially our young Black boys and young Black ladies. I'm also an educator. I've been in education for 22 years, and that's something that I try to pass on to the youth, is that you are more than just your physical gifts, because at one point you're going to have to stop running, stop jumping, stop lifting, stop shooting, and you want the next years to be your best years, not your past years. It's great to reminisce about things you've accomplished. I actually compartmentalize it and put my sports career in one box. Carl mentioned I was inducted into the St. Paul Central Hall of Fame in 2015, and I still have St. Paul City records from back in the late 80s. I'm very proud of that, but that was one chapter of my life. It doesn't define me as an entire person. Now you'll find me operating and running my fitness studio called the Fit Lab. It's in Falcon Heights, and I'm really passionate about changing the lives of BIPOC communities, female. I love working with women-owned businesses, BIPOC businesses, and just collaborating and doing the work of addressing health disparities, and that encompasses mental health, physical health. I basically take a holistic approach to health, and so if I can, during this event, I'd like to sort of oscillate between sports and fitness and wellness, because I feel like I'm equally passionate about all of those things. So currently I run the Fit Lab, and then I have my individual brand called Chizel. I started out training athletes because for me it was kind of a natural transition. Towards the end of my athletic career, I eventually started being the person who was responsible for designing the workouts, because Minnesota, obviously, the community in and of itself, whether it's the Black community or elite athlete circles, is not very big. So I was fortunate enough to have enough success to attract other athletes in track and field that wanted to train with me. So I started designing the workouts, finding a place to work out, finding places to compete. So I actually started putting the pieces of running a business in place before I actually knew what I was doing. So that's why it was an easy transition. Once I was done competing, I easily transitioned into running my own business. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. So I think at one point or another, all three of you mentioned just the business of sport, and what I'm always curious about, I guess, from a standpoint of working with athletes, college and high school. Lots of athletes strive to be at their highest level and participate at the highest level of sport, whether that's NBA, NFL, or something else. How do you manage the expectations of athletes themselves coming into training, using that holistic approach, saying, everyone's not going to make it to the next level. However, at the same time, they want to work their best, so you have to help them out. How do you manage their expectations as well as the expectations of their parents, who are probably the ones bringing them there and paying for it? I'll start with Co. Because parents are tough.
That's kind of a conversation and a theme that we battle at line of scrimmage consistently. When young men specifically come to us, we have a conversation of what is your goal, right? Because we, as an organization, as a company, we want to provide a service that's going to get you those goals. And I think at the end of the day, building a relationship with a family, a young man and a family, is the biggest piece to have those type of conversations. Because I think anybody can say, I'm going to provide a service and get you exactly what you need. But to earn that trust and build that trust and build those relationships, you have to keep it as 100 as possible. And through our experiences, we've been able to build those connections and kind of get that information across to our young people in the best way possible. And they understand it. And I think when it comes to sports and this business it's all about what have you done for me, right? And what have you done for others? So they see athletes talk and they see what the product produces, the service produces. So we talk about what needs to be sacrificed. And if you can sacrifice, if you can do those things, these things will happen after that. And so at that time, it's all about the commitment of the athlete and how much time they put into it. And so I think parents really resonate with that aspect of, are you sacrificing this time? Because you get to see them more than anything. So I think that's how we handle it.
Tyrone, from a fitness standpoint, how would you relate to that question? How do you help athletes from a pure fitness and mental health standpoint not overexert themselves to thinking they need to do something great, but be more about them and themselves in their training?
Yeah, I think I started in my intro by mentioning that I try to communicate to the athletes when they come to me that you are more than just your athletic gifts. Focus on more than just your athletic attributes. There's I'd like to, and now is probably a great time, considering everything that we've been through in the last 2 years. I think it's equally important to get the athlete to focus on their mental health, right? And that includes everything from, just taking care of yourself. The demands on the young athletes today and just youth in general are different than the challenges that I faced. We didn't have social media. And so, social media, you can use that to your advantage to sell yourself, to develop networks, but there has to be a balance, right? And so I talk to the athletes about focusing on being well-rounded. One of the things that I see that younger athletes do today that we didn't do in my day is they specialize. And that's not the best thing necessarily for them mentally or physically. I've seen athletes get burned out in their teens because they're putting too much energy and emphasis in one sport. And so playing multiple sports actually allows them to not burn themselves out. It also develops different skills and attributes. And so, there's basically a way to approach trying to be the best you can be, but at the same time, compartmentalizing that, like I said earlier, and having a life outside of that, the sport. So yeah, it's about finding a balance, I think.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I would definitely echo, what these guys are saying. I would also say, there's an old mantra in sports that goes, use the game, don't let the game use you. It's something, athletes, they hear all the time coming up. And, that's something that I draw on myself, right? Because, I have friends, old teammates from high school, college, that were so all in on basketball. And then when that opportunity was taken away from them, they didn't know what direction to go. And that would be a situation of, somebody letting the game use them, right? Once basketball was done with them, then, they weren't needed anymore. And you got to flip that switch. You got to flip that narrative, right? You got to say, hey, I'm actually going to come in here to get something out of this. And what is this game going to do for me? So I think for parents with teenagers or younger kids, just telling them that earlier, right, and letting them know, hey, it's okay to put all your eggs in this basket, but what are you getting out of this? What are you making sure to receive from this, right? And if you don't get that, what's your plan B? So I think, talking to kids about the fact that there's opportunities in sports outside of just playing and being on the field is something that's useful too, right? The CEO of an NBA team, probably makes upwards of $10 million a year, whereas the average player, is making $3-4 million a year, right? So there's actually an opportunity to make more money off of the court as part of the organization than there is on the court. But most kids don't know that, right? They see the glamorous lifestyles of the star players, and you could also have that through a different avenue, right? You could be the top executive, or you could be you can sell the tickets, or you could be on the court as a trainer. There's different avenues that you can take where you don't have to be that guy on the court to get success out of the game. And if you truly love the game, and if you truly love being around sports, that should be good, right? You shouldn't always, sure, you should strive to be the guy on the court, but you should also understand that from a statistical standpoint, those guys are very lucky. There's a lot of things that happen right for them to have long, sustainable careers. And both of these guys will tell you, right? They both have been in professional sports, and they know what it takes to get there. But I think for the majority, who aren't in that small, minuscule percentage that make it, really hammering that message home that, hey, there's still stuff that you can do here. Like, you can still have a life inside of sports. You don't have to be completely devastated when you find out that you're not good enough to be drafted as a lottery pick, or you don't have to be completely beside yourself. You don't have to get depressed. You don't have to, you can have a renewed energy and say, all right, what can I do to still stay in sports? So I think that that message is something that parents should be telling to their kids. I also think too, from a networking standpoint, parents obviously have access to a lot more than kids, right? You've got friends that work in certain areas. You've got, you got people that from passing, and just using your network to help your kids propel too is something that will go a long way, right? So helping them with that interview, or helping them get into the college, or hey, my friend Steve knows this guy that is starting a company. Why don't you go try and apply there? I think as a parent, being in that role and using your resources and using your network to help your kids will go a long way too.
Thank you. Right on. So earlier, McDaniel spoke a little bit about just salesmanship, being in sales, and understanding the sales side of things. Obviously, running your own business with sport, there's a need to attract new clients. there's a sell yourself, sell your business, sell the opportunity. How have you, Tyrone, we'll start with you. How have you sort of not only sold yourself, but how do you attract new clients and keep new clients in a world right now where sometimes it's easier just to go online and do online workouts?
I would say the number one thing for me is I take care of the clients that I have currently. I think I've watched small businesses in the fitness industry, particularly personal trainers. They would constantly focus on attracting new clients, and then they would neglect the very clients that allowed them to run the business in the first place. So I would say number one is take care of the clients that you do have. And those clients generally will do a good job of selling you. You know, I would probably generate 90+% of my business from referrals and word of mouth, right? So that's major. So I focus on basically making sure that I deliver high quality service to the clients that I currently have. You know, I'm getting more traction with social media as of late, but again, the primary focus for me is always focusing on the clients that I do have. I'm not a salesman in the traditional sense, because I don't want a client to work with me because I basically got them to commit to a contract, you know what I'm saying, or sign up for services that they weren't sure they wanted. I want you to be there and stay with me because you like the results that you're getting, and you like the relationship, because for me, that's where it starts, building relationships. I don't necessarily focus on just the athlete. I focus on the entire person. So by focusing on the relationship, I build that trust. The client feels like we're in this together, right? Whether it's an athlete or just an everyday person trying to improve their health. So, yes.
Cool. How do you attract new customers, being that you're working with high school and college athletes primarily?
A big piece for us was being where the athletes are. Typically what we do specifically, line of scrimmage works with offensive and defensive linemen. So we work with a very specific clientele. And so during the falls, all our athletes, all our clients, all our consultants, teams that we consult with are all playing. So we consistently stay up to speed on athletes that are, you know, in our area, in the regions we want to attract. Consistently building relationships with coaches across the metro, for sure, just focusing on the Twin Cities, and just popping up and being at games. We work pretty hard throughout the spring and summer, preparing for athletes for the season. And on Friday nights, we pull up to games. So you can find us at Lakeville South, you can find us at Champlin, at North, at Edison, at Roosevelt. And so once these young men see that it's not just a business aspect, a trainer-coach relationship, it's like more of a family relationship. I'm pulling up to games, we're going out after to eat. And so like those type of things, other families see that, other parents see that, other athletes see that, not just what they're performing on the field, but we're just not coaches in that and what we do. So a lot of, you know, social media is really huge with our main clientele being high school kids, high school athletes, and college athletes. Social media is a big piece of how we attract our clientele and our athletes and our families. We also have a newsletter that we have at our webpage, losscrimmage.com. Parents sign up for the newsletters, because when a kid signs up for your program, it's more him saying he's interested and his parents going online and putting their credit card information in. And so it's not the kid that's registering, it's the parents. And so we make sure that once those parents get to our website, there is a newsletter that they get information throughout just on how to kind of navigate this process. And so when parents feel comfortable and they feel like there's people that are navigating them through, because some of these athletes, their goals are to play professional football. Their goals are to get scholarships. So if those are those goals, mom, dad, you're going to be driving to Kansas. You're going to be driving to Illinois. You're going to be flying to Los Angeles if he's going to Southern California, you know, so kind of preparing those parents for what's to kind of come. And then everything we put out for our parents comes through the newsletter. So I think word of mouth is a big piece of that. And then just keeping updated on our social medias. We have a solid social media team that consistently pumps out content to athletes, and that was a big piece during the pandemic, or we're still in the pandemic, right? So, but when the pandemic first started, everything was kind of at a halt. We weren't training athletes, we weren't consulting, but when you have 10,000 people on your social media and they're kind of looking to see what the content is, there needs to be content flowing. So we did a good job just staying relevant throughout the pandemic when everything was shut down. And so that's, you know, hours of preparation, of drill tape being recorded and things like that, giving athletes what they needed to do at home when they were at home, if you couldn't meet with us, certain things like that. So I think we kind of stayed in front of the 8 ball, I would say, in that aspect of just having content. But social media is a big piece of connecting athletes, being where they are, and also being able to, because most of the time they're here. So if that's where they are, we need to be in front of them. So.
McDaniel, you mentioned earlier that your primary customer are colleges and universities. Well, how does your method work differently than sort of the individuals and more of the institutions?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of, colder outreach, to be honest with you. So, a lot of the leads that I'm reaching out to aren't, exactly warm. Obviously, I know they're colleges, so they must have a basketball program. They could be in need of a shooting machine. But a lot of my outreach is honestly very cold and unassumptive, right? So, how many people in here have seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street? It's very recent with Leo DiCaprio. So a few people. That movie as a salesperson, it really kind of put us a few steps back because, people will see that movie and they think that all salespeople are just trying to get the money out of your pocket as quick as possible. And, that movie does a good job of really showing the sleazy salesperson and what that person can be. So I think when you are entering into a colder outreach like that, you want to go in understanding that, like, hey, this person very first and foremost is going to view you as a salesperson and all the negative connotations that may come with that. And that could be your fault, that could be a movie they saw, whatever, but the reality is those connotations are there. So I think understanding that going in and not assuming anything, not assuming that you're going to, get anything out of it. So when I reach out to colleges, a lot of the times I'll already have the information of who the coach is. So that's one thing. You want to do some research on the front end. So you go in and you know exactly who you're asking for. You know exactly, what their role is. So if I'm calling, college, I'll say, hey, can I talk to Coach Smith? He's a boys basketball coach, just for 5-10 minutes, not again, unassuming, you don't want to act like you're calling to, demand their time or anything like that. Hey, if he's got 5 minutes, great. And then from there, you want to continue that path. So I'll just try to get a meeting with them, right? Or try to schedule what that next communication is going to be. So when you are lucky enough to get someone on the phone like that, you don't want to just throw all your chips at it, right? You don't want to just go, hey, I'm selling these shooting machines. Like, I think your team is going to really love them. This is what we can do for you. No, you want to get a series of yeses, right? So it's yes. Can I have 5 minutes every time? Yeah, sure. Okay, then from there, can I talk to you about the Dr. Dish shooting machine? Yeah, sure. Hey, maybe we can reschedule something next week, right? And then you put that on your calendar for next week, right? And it's those small yeses that lead up to the sale. But I think a lot of the times salespeople shoot themselves in the foot because they try to go in and they try to get too much out of the initial outreach. You want to have a little bit more tact. You want to be able to take it a bit slower, and that comes with a numbers game too, right? So the more people that you're reaching out to with that strategy, the more meetings you're gonna get, the more next steps you're gonna get. And it turns to a point where you're not really too reliant on just one college or one school to come in. You've got a bigger, robust pipeline of maybe 10, 20, 30 schools that you've talked to that you can go to and say, all right, where are you guys at now in the process? But I think, just those small steps really, really, really help with that if you're doing more of a colder outreach.
Awesome, thank you. I have a fun question, but does anyone have a question in the audience? I want to make sure I'm. Yes.
So my question is, do I need to pick up the? Okay, all right. So my question is, how much exposure do you give athletes and or clientele about HBCUs as a choice to attend?
I can start with that. So again, being in education, I've been able to reach thousands of kids in my years. And a few years back, I took a group of kids. I was part of an organization that took a group of kids on an HBCU college tour. That actually opened even my eyes to the opportunities that exist in athletics, not just because historically when I thought HBCU, I thought they're going to get a great, well-rounded experience, but maybe not the greatest athletic experience, but they've come a long way. So I actually try to promote looking at other opportunities other than the traditional, what we see, the big market teams, the schools that have the most money. So I absolutely try to promote HBCU whenever possible.
I would say uniquely for us at Line of Scrimmage, we've built relationships. When you play the game for so long, you build so many relationships, and at the end of everybody's playing career, everybody kind of splatters and goes into different avenues and different worlds. So fortunately for us, we have relationships with HBCUs, coaches. So when those recruiting times come around and we get text messages of, hey, I have a kid here in Minneapolis that you should probably check out, we kind of give those opportunities to our guys. And it's great for us because when I was coming out, I don't think I had anybody tell me about an HBCU, right? I didn't know they existed until, I started watching Stomp the Yard and things like that in college. And I'm just like, whoa, what is this experience? So I think it's pretty awesome that, we've been able to build those relationships and, can give those guys those opportunities, say, hey, if your goal isn't to go to the University of Minnesota or Wisconsin, there's some other opportunities down in Georgia. There's opportunities in Florida that you can go check out. I have a coach who's interested that kind of wants to talk to you, right? And I think when, those guys that are in those positions as those coaches, they can understand how to build those relationships with our guys, especially of our athletes of color, our young Black men. So when I think all it really takes is a phone call and the opportunity for some athletes, because they're not really exposed to those opportunities. I think Deion Sanders being at Jackson State really opened up a lot of young people's eyes that like this could be a route, and I think a lot of athletes don't take that route because it's typically ends at that college level if you're trying to continue to play at the NFL. A lot of guys have those NFL aspirations and they think they need to go to big time programs to fulfill that. And so I think that stigma is being flipped on its head with guys like Deion Sanders taking over a program at Jackson State. So.
I also wanted to mention, just to piggyback on what Cole was saying, the challenges are traditionally well-known schools. They have the greatest resources, right? And so at the end of the day, it has to make sense for the athlete, the student, financially. I know for me, I was the first person in my household to go to college and the first person to get an advanced degree. And so I used, to also talk about McDaniel's part, to jump on McDaniel's point, I used athletics as a means to an end to get a free education. And so when it came time to decide where I was going to commit, I had the big schools offering full ride scholarships. So as much as I may have wanted that HBCU experience, it was like, okay, I wanted to make sure that my journey wasn't high school, college debt for the rest of my life, right? And that's what you see with the exorbitant amount that tuition rates are going up, and just the cost of education in general. So what I'd love to see are, especially in the midst of the pandemic and still in the midst of this social justice movement that is transpiring, I'd like to see corporations, athletes, billionaires investing in HBCUs so that they can provide the opportunities to young athletes that are provided at our major universities. Because actually, if they can get to an HBCU, I would venture to guess that they're going to get a more well-rounded experience. You know, they're going to. It doesn't mean that athletes at or professors at general Division I schools don't care about them, but I've been on an HBCU campus and I see the familial type bond that they have with the professors and the staff, and it's different. Hopefully major universities have grown since I was in college, but when I was in college, it was pretty much those universities basically exploiting the young athletes. They were okay with an athlete getting a general studies degree, a degree that they would be able to do nothing with, basically do enough to stay eligible is how it was. And so I want these young men and women who are coming out today to think about themselves, as McDaniel alluded to, use the sport, use your gift to better your life. Don't get used by the sport. The great Sean Carter said, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman." So you think of yourself as a brand and think about what you can get from having these athletic gifts, not just, okay, I'm going to go run and jump and catch, for 4 years, but what's going to happen after that?
And one thing that's also really helped the athlete recently in the last couple of years is obviously the name, image, and likeness deals that have been coming up, and the fact that athletes are finally able to use those things to make money and profit off of. So like it was mentioned, some of those bigger schools, the Dukes, Kentuckys, they've always had the leverage and power to bring in some of the top recruits, because at the end of the day, those are the big names, and that exposure is really what's going to get you to the next level. But I think now, as schools are able to provide more for athletes through those NIL deals, that's where athletes can start to look at HBCUs and say, oh, maybe I can go here and get a sponsorship through this company, or maybe I can get paid now instead of waiting until I'm professional, or maybe they won't make you professional. But I think going that avenue with the NIL deals is something that HBCUs can really hop on now and try to get more of the top tier athletes in.
And McDaniel, for those that may not know, maybe you might want to tell them what that NIL.
Yeah, NIL is name, image, likeness. So traditionally in college sports, a player wasn't able to profit off of their name, right? So if their name is on a jersey and the jersey is being sold at the team store, that player was unable through NCAA rules to get a portion of those profits. So the name, image, likeness deals, I believe it was last season or the season before, opened that up to athletes now. So even with us at Dr. Dish basketball, we have Ty Washington, who's the starting point guard at Kentucky, who's sponsored by us. So he's got a shooting machine through us, and he does social media posts for us and things like that. And obviously he gets a kickback from that as well. But again, it's just showing those opportunities, right? Because that's a way that you can get something out of the game, even while you're playing, and you still consider an amateur, right? So those NIL deals are really good for the athletes now, and I think as more, like I said, HBCUs start to look into that as a means to bringing in the top tier athletes, that can help their success as well. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, no.
I do.
Absolutely.
All right, so earlier you mentioned trainers as a non-athletic career. What about for the non-athletic sports lover? What other careers might be available that especially our students may not be aware of within this arena?
So just for the online, your question was, what are opportunities in training for non-athletes?
Yes. Non-athletic sports lovers.
Non-athletic sports lovers, what are opportunities that they have in the business of sport?
Yes.
Or whoever wants to take that first, please.
Sport. So actually, I actually run the fitness studio where I have a few athletes, but we work with multiple small businesses. So we have some trainers that were not athletes, right? But they're interested in helping people improve their health. We work with meal prep companies. We work with nutritionists, mental health therapists. And so that's, again, all about the holistic approach to health and wellness. And so in terms of the sports arena, though, I think that our young people really should start to see themselves as bosses and owners. If you ask the average young Black male basketball player who he would aspire to be like, most of them would either say LeBron James or one of the younger players that are playing. So we're always in their mind, they only see themselves as the entertainers. I want to inspire someone to say, I want to be Glenn Taylor or Jerry Jones, because then the thing about your athletic talent, number one, it can go away in an instance, but also it's not transferable. You can't pass that on to the next generation. If you own a franchise, that is generational wealth that will be passed on for years to come, and it will change the trajectory of your family's life.
I would say, speaking as someone that was able to break into the sports industry on the non-playing side, a lot of the coworkers that I had, you couldn't mistake them for athletes at all, right? They were, but I think the biggest piece of advice that I would give to, someone trying to break in is, don't, if you're in an interview or if you're, in a situation where you potentially could get a job in sports, don't say that you're just looking to get your foot in the door in sports, because, that may sound like, hey, this kid is willing to do whatever it takes, right? This person is willing to do whatever it takes to get into sports. But, you have to be more centered and more focused on what you want to do in sports. Do you want to be in sales? Do you want to be on the team operations side? Do you want to be an intern for, for video and maybe on the coaching side? So I think you have to be more focused and direct in what you want to do in sports, and instead of just saying, hey, I just want to get my foot in the door, right? Because to someone on the other side, they're saying, well, you just sound like a sports fan. You don't sound like someone that, is a fan of sales, or you don't sound like someone that's a fan of marketing, or you don't sound like someone that's a fan of, digital web design. So you have to say, although this is sports, this is my niche still, right? This is still the value that I can provide to you guys, even if you stripped all the sports away, right? Even if even if it wasn't a shooting machine that I was selling or Timberwolves tickets that I was selling, I could still get on the phone and sell medical devices. I could still get on the phone and sell, whatever. So I think being able to say, hey, I have this skill, that's transferable, that's not just tied to one thing. It's not just tied to my love for this team, or it's not just tied to my love for basketball. I think that'll go a long way too when you're trying to break in.
Specifically when it comes to football, there's a lot that goes into a football player that transitions on what we see on Friday nights for high school players, Saturday nights for college guys, and Sunday for NFL players. And so we kind of introduce our athletes and our families to that whole world. So we have a partnership with TCO, Twin Cities Orthopedics. So we do a lot of our training and our consulting at those locations. And in Egan, at the new Vikings facility, there's a performance facility called the Training House. And at the Training House, they have arguably the best PTs in the country, as well as some of the best nutritionists and sports performance coaches. So when we kind of consolidate our football, and when what we do at line of scrimmage is all IQ, so learning the game versus playing the game. So knowing why this person is successful, drilling the same thing, recording. So it kind of introduces athletes to a totally different world that they're not really the behind the scenes of the game. And so with the nutritionists that we have our clinics, we host camps, and we have nutritionists come in and talk to our athletes. So this is what you need to be putting in your body. They might have been athletes, but the lane of where they are now, they're nutritionists. So they can tell the athletes why they aren't as strong, why they aren't as powerful because of the food that they're eating, and what calorie intake and what type of proteins and things that they need to be eating at that time. Just to keep athletes' bodies as 100%, we have physical therapists that are at the training house consistently working with athletes, rehabbing athletes. So we have those resources that we expose our athletes to, so they kind of see and they have that overall kind of understanding of what the things that are going to be needed for you to be successful. Because it's not just about what you do on the field, it's about how you take care of your body those 23 hours when you're not on the field. So it's a lot of those other avenues that our athletes can be able to explore as well.
Awesome. Our fun question, should you be willing to answer, feel free. Have you ever trained or worked with anyone famous, and if so, who? And you can, the most famous person you've trained or worked with.
Guess I'll take that one. So I've actually worked with Olympians who competed for their respective countries, and none of those countries were America. But I've competed against world record holders. I don't know, we got any track fans out there. I've raced Maurice Green. I competed against Leroy Burrell, who was also a former 100-meter record holder. The interesting thing about track is that after college, there's opportunities to compete in the same meets that the stars are competing in. So, I've been to meets with Carl Lewis, and I was at the indoor national meet when Michael Johnson broke the world record in the 400. So I've been able to compete against and be amongst some of the greatest athletes in the history of track and field, and even a few football players. So.
For me, when I was with the Timberwolves, I didn't really interact with the players too much. I didn't really, work with anyone very high profile. The one that I can think of was there was a Liberian player that played for the Timberwolves maybe 1 or 2 seasons back. His name was Noah Vonleh. And through the organization of Liberians in Minnesota, I was able to set up a type, kind of like a ticket charity giveaway thing where he helped that organization come out to a game. But outside of that, not too much. On the Dr. Dish side, we do go to coaching clinics sometimes for marketing. So let's say if there's the Indiana coaching clinics, for example, I'll go down there and last summer I was at the Hoosiers gym. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie Hoosiers. It's a bit older, but it's about like playing basketball in a cornfield, I guess. But it's a really famous gym in that movie, and they had a clinic down there, so I was able to go there. But a lot of the more, I guess, high profile people that I work with now are more on the coaching side, as obviously we're trying to get machines into their programs. But.
Yeah, I think being in this business that we are in, we come across a lot of guys, a lot of football players, specifically college guys. Since we kind of started working with a lot of high school guys, and now our high school guys have transitioned to playing in college. So right now, we have it's a fun time because one of our defensive ends, his name is Quaye. He's a defensive end at the University of Minnesota. He just finished up his senior year. He's a Hopkins grad. He's one of those young men that came to us and said, "Hey, I want the world, and I'll do anything you tell me to do." And so he really took that. He's a cousin. He's a cousin of my business partner. So he's kind of in family. So he took in everything, and now he just wrapped up. He just wrapped up playing in the Reese's Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama, where he was the defensive player of the year, defensive player of the week for the national team. So those things, being able to be along for those journeys and watching those journeys of him being just a scrawny kid at Hopkins to now, going out to the Reese's Senior Bowl and putting on a show, and now, there's talk of his draft stock probably becoming the first round draft pick. And so those are the stories that that kind of hit heavy because you watched it like throughout the time. So and just being able to bounce around from clinics across the country, meeting up with different pro guys, being in our line of work, defensive line, specifically is a brotherhood. And so if you've played on a defensive line and you've played at the highest level, I think that brotherhood kind of opens up doors to be able to connect and network and be a part of different camps and clinics across the country. So.
Awesome. If there was a question, if there was a high school or college student here today asking what would they do, or what classes should they take, or what major should they major in, what would you recommend? To get into the business of sport, if you're not an athlete, what skill sets, what classes, what majors should they focus on in 2022?
I would say I would say a lot of communication classes. I think there's tons of people that have played the game and know how to play it well. But when it comes to coaching, you need to deliver that message the clearest way possible to a 6-year-old, to a 13-year-old, to a 25-year-old. And I think that's one of our biggest skill set as organizations, that we're great communicators. And so to be able to coach 15, 12-year-olds at the same time, and get the message across as simplistic as possible for them to comprehend it and then retain it is the biggest piece. Because I think in the business, you get a lot of people that say, well, I can coach because I know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to say this to this person and they're going to understand it because I'm telling them. But that's not really how it works, right? And that's why I think that's why everybody can't be a teacher, right? Everybody can't be a teacher. And I think to be a good coach, you have to be a great teacher. And so communication would be a big piece when it comes to sport, because I think the message is the biggest piece, and you got to be able to get that across to everybody.
I was gonna start by saying, business classes or economics classes, but Quaye gave such a great answer regarding communication that I'm just gonna piggyback off of it and say the same thing. I would say communication is probably the biggest thing. That how can you get your message out there, right? Whether that's a written message, in the form of a resume that you're putting in front of somebody, or whether that's, a first time outreach via phone call. There's very important things in communication, like your tone, your diction, your cadence, exactly how you're asking questions. So all of those little things matter. And I think the more you're able to communicate with, professional people in that manner, it'll go a long way for you. So I would definitely say communication. Another thing I would say too, so I'm completely piggybacking, would say it would be authenticity as well. If there's one thing I think the pandemic has taught us recently, as people are doing Zoom calls in their pajamas or, they're not seeing people face to face as much as they used to. I think the authenticity has become the new professional in a sense, because, people are looking for people that are real and that they can trust. And being able to project that, it will go a long way for you. So I would definitely say communication and authenticity.
I would say, since McDaniel didn't touch on it, your accounting and finance and economics. I think when people think about the business of sports, they think about sports first and business is secondary. I've watched personal training businesses start and fail because the person was passionate about fitness, but knew nothing about business and wasn't, quite frankly, not that interested in learning about the business until their business started to suffer. And so I would highly recommend that before a young person decides this is the route I want to take, get some practical experience in that area to see what the person really does. Find a mentor, someone that can help you with advice, expand your network, and basically help you on that journey. So yeah, I think the thing that I want to impart the most is it is absolutely critical that you focus on the business aspect of sports so that you don't, we've heard the horror stories about professional athletes who retire broke because they didn't understand their investments or they trusted this accountant to invest their money. I don't know anybody in here, or maybe there's someone in here that only wants to work and not be compensated. So yeah, it's baffling when I see, there's already a blueprint, or you can learn from the mistakes of people in the past, but it still seems to happen over and over where people don't focus on the business aspect of sports. We know it's a big business, or sports is big business because you assign those two terms, or you marry those two terms, sports entertainment. The minute somebody can monetize or profit off of something, it is a business. And so that's what you need to think about first and foremost.
Did I see a hand? Oh, maybe you're scratching your neck. Perfect. So for each of you and your business specifically, where do you see your business in the next 2 to 3 years? What's kind of the growth plan or next projection level for you and your business personally? And we'll start with Coach, since you're right next. Sorry.
I think the biggest piece for us is just continuing to provide the service for the Twin Cities, really growing in the Twin Cities. We've traveled and done some work. I just got back from Miami, probably I think 3 weeks ago, for a podium All-American Bowl. Had the opportunity to coach down there and kind of expand the brand down there. But we partnered with United Turf in Sioux City, Iowa. So kind of staying focused on different regions, but really going hard just throughout the Twin Cities and being able to expand. We do a lot of camps. We host a lot of clinics. We have a coaches clinic coming up on the 20th of this month. So just continuing to provide resources to just the whole football culture. I think we started out from the outside looking in, and realistically from the inside out as well. We were a defensive line training company, and all we did was train guys, teach them how to play defensive line. And then throughout the years, we kind of expanded to being a more shelled culture of just coaching, understanding the game, and building the culture around Minnesota and changing the culture. And because the biggest piece for us was when we left Minnesota to go play in different places, we saw that the culture was different around football. And so we took those pieces and tried to bring it here. And so just consistently growing this culture here in Minnesota is kind of where we're kind of focused on.
For me, I would highlight my notary company. Within the next 2 to 3 years. Right now, I'm a sole proprietor in every sense of the word. So it's me calling mortgage companies to try to schedule meetings with them, or me booking all the signings, and then me actually doing the signings myself. Doing all the paperwork, printing that off. So I would say within the next 2 to 3 years, I want to be able to hire more notaries to potentially take some of that business for me, teach them how to be a notary, teach them how to, execute a signing and things like that. And hopefully to be able to, have a staff of notaries, that I can, outsource business to. Because right now it's a little demanding, and there's some appointments that I have to kind of put on the back burner just because it's only me. But to be able to have 2, 3 notaries underneath me that I can hand business off to would be ideal for me, I think.
You can expect to see some collaborations with small businesses, local small businesses. You can expect to see hopefully some partnerships with both small businesses and large corporations. I actually have created some holistic wellness programming that I'd like to scale. And I understand that, as McDaniel just pointed out, it's very difficult to do everything yourself, right? And so you need to be able to partner with people. That's both in a business sense outside of your business, but even also within. You have to have a well-rounded team. Like for me, being the owner, the operator, I actually train, trying to do social media, all these things. You basically have to make sure that you're outsourcing or bringing in talented people so that you can scale and grow your business. Again, I've watched certain small businesses. For example, I worked with a meal prep company, and the food was phenomenal. The price point was great, but this person tried to prepare the meals, deliver, just do market, and eventually she started getting so much traction, she couldn't keep up with the business that was coming in. And so ultimately she ended up shutting down. And early on, I tried to, have conversations. I never want to impose, my views on someone, but if I feel like I can help them, I try to. And I spoke to that very point about, have you thought about how you're going to scale this? Because, at the time, she felt like she could handle it, and then it became overwhelming. So yeah, I'd like to, again, collaborate and partner with small businesses, large corporations, but also grow my team so that I can present some of the programming, both locally and nationally, eventually.
As we begin to sort of wrap, were there any questions that I missed? Keep our mind, our voice. Okay. We want to thank you guys for coming out and make sure we appreciate your time, but we want to sort of give you an opportunity now to sort of, if there's either, we can get this later too, but an email or website that we can sort of reach out to sort of connect both with all your businesses. I know, McDaniel, you had mentioned the notary is kind of key right now.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to sort of highlight some of the things you're doing, or you go to any website for that?
I would say 21stcenturynotary.com is my website. I'm still kind of in the development stage on it, so more to come on that. But I would just say, you can find me on LinkedIn as well, McDaniel Doe. That's the only social media that I have at the moment. So that's where you can find me and network with me a little bit more.
Awesome. We have a line of Scrimmage has a website, is LOS and then Scrimmage, with just one S. So it's LO Scrimmage. So, and you can find us at lineofscrimmage.mn on social media as well.
And for me, it's the Fit Lab INC. So THEFITLAB.INC.com. So that's where you'll find all of the social media handles for the Fit Lab, and then personally my own brand, Chizel Inc. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at InstaChizel, INSTACHIZEL. That's the distinction. There's a Z, not an S. So Chizel. So yeah.
Awesome. With that, we want to wrap up, but I want to give opportunities. I know that some of you have questions that you want to ask individually the folks, and we want to have an opportunity to sort of work through some of that and have conversations. I'm also can take any questions that you have. We want to again appreciate everyone for being out here or for coming out today, Ty, McDaniel, and Kel, and then also make sure that we are registering folks for what I believe is going to be one of our, not that you guys aren't cool, but really said that, I was like, I'm kicking it. But our March speaker series, we're pretty excited about. These 6 ladies are amazing, literally amazing. And you may know some of them, but we're excited for the March 7th event. We'll have an opportunity, a lot larger panel. We'll probably break it up into 2 separate groups, but we're really excited for the opportunity to sort of highlight Women's Month with these 6 speakers. So make sure you register for that. That's available to you. And if you have any questions throughout the rest of today or want to speak to our speakers, take pictures and all this type of stuff, that is still available to you for the next few minutes. So enjoy. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys stick around for pictures.